Hi, my name is Dr. John Douillard. I want to talk to you today about coughing, something that we all do, something that can be very nagging, pesky, and extremely disruptive in your life. And I want to talk to you about the Ayurvedic understanding of what a cough is, where it comes from, and some strategies to address this pesky thing called the cough. Now, it all starts in the winter. Winter is a dry time of the year. We know that our sinuses will dry out. We know that our skin dries out in the winter. And when the skin begins to dry out, particularly the skin that lines your respiratory tract, it causes and triggers a production of excess reactive mucus. And that excess reactive mucus can actually become an irritant. They can actually become a breeding ground for undesirable microbes that can begin to infiltrate in our respiratory tract. That extra reactive mucus that comes from the dryness of winter can actually begin to drip down from the sinuses down the back of our throat and cause a drip, a postnasal drip, which can be the beginning of a cough. Now, nature had a plan for this, and they said, if I'm going to give you winter, which is cold and dry, I'm going to make sure I give you plenty of foods in the harvest in the fall, in October and November, of root vegetables and soups and stews and possibly more proteins and more fats in your diet to help lubricate nuts and seeds, things like that, to lubricate and insulate and protect the respiratory mucosa from this excess dryness which is coming. But if we don't, respond with nature's harvest and eat according to the seasons, the sinuses will tend to dry out and we will tend to produce a certain amount of reactive mucus. Undesirable microbes will proliferate or can proliferate in that reactive mucus and cause even more reactive mucus production that can drip down, cause sinus congestion. And the more sinus congestion you get, the more undesirable microbes can proliferate. The more that mucus can drip down into the back of your throat. And cause a postnasal drip and a reactive cough to try to expel or expectorate the mucus. Now, when the sinuses dry out, it also can cause sort of a scratchy throat, so you can get that beginning of a sore throat kind of a thing. And there are many things you can do, first prophylactically, because you know it's winter, to protect yourself against the dryness of your respiratory tract. Simple things like even a humidifier in your house and things like that. Eating a diet, of course, that is more appropriate to the season makes really good logical sense. Even staying warm and not letting your body get cold, because in Ayurveda, when you get cold, you become dry. So wearing a hat, particularly when you have no hair like me, you have to wear a hat. And when you don't have any hair like me, you realize how much hair matters in terms of insulating your head and even your neck and even your respiratory tract. So if you want to really see what it means to be cold and then get your sinuses dried out, shave your head. Because it's very important to keep your head warm in Ayurveda. One of the most important things, and very few people really get that in the West, and it's so important to do that, particularly in the winter when we can get excessively cold and dry. That can cause a scratchy throat, that can cause sinus dryness, irritation, mucus production, and it can drip down the back of your throat and cause this pesky cough. Springtime comes, and I always say, to the extent that you let your sinuses get dried out in the winter is to the extent that your sinuses will make extra mucus in the spring. Now remember, spring is what we call allergy season, right? The earth holds on to more water in the spring. We also, as part of nature, hold on to more water and become more congested in the springtime. So the earth holds on to more water in the spring, and we hold on to more water in the spring, and therefore more vulnerable to congestion allergy season. So nature had a plan for that too, by giving us, not meats and soups and stews like in winter. The harvest dramatically shifts from sprouts and berries and cherries and other types of more drying, astringent root vegetables to help sop up all the extra mucus and not let it become a congestive irritant. But again, to the extent that you got dry in the winter is to the extent that you'll produce reactive mucus in the spring, and that can overshoot the runway of your ability to handle certain mucus. And then, of course, in the spring, we have this pollen surge that happens in nature that acts as a major overwhelming respiratory irritant that can produce more reactive mucus. And so if you're not, eating the foods of spring, and you hadn't actually protected the mucous membranes from the dryness of the winter, you are sort of the perfect storm for allergies and all types of respiratory issues. And this cough that you might have gotten from being under the weather in the winter can actually become persistent and chronic all springtime long if you don't understand the rules of how to deal with this. So there are many strategies to this, and Ayurveda has a technique called nasya, where you actually take medicated oil into your sinuses and sniff into your sinuses to help lubricate. I think everybody knows about neti pots, where you pour saline solution into your sinuses and you clean out your sinuses. But the other half of that technique is something called nasya, where you actually sniff a herbalized oil into your sinuses to lubricate your sinuses. In Ayurveda, there's a strategy to help make this happen. The first strategy is demulcent therapies. Therapies that are going to lubricate your sinuses, nasya oil being one of them for sure. Herbs like slippery elm is a demulcent bark that lubricates your sinuses. Herbs like licorice, these all really need to be a part of any respiratory formula, are the demulcent herbs to lubricate and protect the sinuses. Then, of course, you want things that are going to open up the airways. And there are many herbs that are classic for that. Herbs like osha root, which has natural camphor in the root, and it actually has a natural airway opening effect. Herbs like horehound and peppermint have menthol literally in the leaves of the peppermint, and they actually specifically open up the airway. So you want these airway openers, and most of these also have mucus thinning properties. So step one, lubricate and demulce with things like slippery elm and licorice. Step two, you want to open the airways with things like osha root and horehound and peppermint and menthol and camphor-based agents. Things like that make a lot of sense. And then perhaps, maybe most importantly, in a respiratory form, it would be something like ginger. Ginger and horehound both have natural antimicrobial properties. So if you do have a little extra mucus and you have these undesirable microbes wanting to proliferate in your respiratory tract, then these herbs tend to help protect against the infiltration of these undesirable microbes. Ginger in particular may be it's called the universal spice in Ayurveda, so important for thinning the mucus, boosting immunity in the upper respiratory tract, helping to open up the airways. It has, it sort of does it all from the point of view of respiratory support. But those are some really basic logical strategies. First, understanding in nature had a plan. Nature had a plan to make sure that from our diet that we don't ever have these problems become so, so far along that we actually become, congested and get a chronic cough. And so if we listen to nature's prescription of eating with the seasons that I talk about in my 3-season diet book, but also we have our 3-season diet challenge that everybody should know is an absolutely free offer that we put out a diet recipe plan every month for an entire year. And it's going to go on year after year, where folks can actually get recipes and diets and research and videos about how to connect back to Mother Nature and eat with the seasons. I'm sort of a little blown away by the extreme pendulum shifting that takes place from one diet to the next. And I just want to get people back to hearing and understanding and experiencing the logic of nature. And that would protect you from these chronic, pesky, nagging, undesirable coughs that tend to take place. Also, look at herbal formulas like our Ayurvedic cough kicker that have herbs that make sense to actually unravel the underlying factors of what actually may have set you up for a cough in the first place. Please check out the article associated with this video on my website at LifeSpa.com. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at LifeSpa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.